Hey everyone, welcome to the Humans and Wildlife Show. My name is Georgia O'Terry. I'm a bat biologist, and with me, as always, is my co host Christian Zase, who is an eagle photographer. So, Christian, what are we going to talk about today?
Yeah, hi everyone. Wonderful to see you all. We got something really exciting. We've got Maya Higa here today, and it's an absolute honor. So, Maya is, well, she's a conservationist and she's a falconer and so on, and I think she's really young, and so it's amazing to see that. So, we're really honored to have her on the show. I'm going to bring her up straight away. Give me a second. There we
Hi,
go.
Maya. Thanks for joining us today.
Of course, thank you.
So, Maya, among her many accomplishments, has started the Alveus Rehab Center. Is that the formal name of it?
Alveus Sanctuary. We're not a rehab center. We
Sanctuary.
don't do
Okay,
any
sorry.
rehab, but that's okay.
Gotcha. So, from what I can gather from watching your Twitch stream and looking around at your website and stuff like that, there's a lot that you do at the sanctuary in terms of, to prepare all the food for the animals. You put together like habitats and enclosures and stuff for them. So, I wanted to start off with what is like your favorite thing to do as part of running the sanctuary, and what also is like, yeah, your kind of favorite thing or something weird that you had to learn to do as part of that.
That's a good question. My favorite thing is and has always been the education piece. So I like curating educational programs. I do a lot of education on my stream with our ambassadors at the sanctuary. So I'm really into that. The most difficult thing or surprisingly difficult thing I think has been project management, construction management a little bit. We have lots of projects going on all at the same time of enclosures being built and fence line being put in and ditches being dug out, and stuff that I didn't know anything about before I founded, and I'm learning very quickly. So that's probably the hardest or weirdest, least favorite part of my job.
So Maya, did your background actually, I know you grew up in California, I think on a farm, did that help you a bit?
Mhm. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I grew up on it was a really small farm, like a hobby farm. It was an acre. But we had horses, pigs, goats, sheep, rabbits, chickens, the whole deal. And so, yeah, I've been around animals my whole life. I did domestics up until college. It's when I started with exotics and birds and zookeeping. But until then, it was all barnyard animals, and I was studying to be in the livestock industry. So.
Oh wow, I didn't realize that. So what led to like the switch? Were you just like, wow, the animals are cooler, or?
Yeah, I guess. I started zookeeping when I was in college. And I just kind of fell in love with all the different types of animals that were there. I was so used to um, animals that we could all work free contact all the time, and it was farm animals, and it was super easy. And then I was around big cats and bears and monkeys and lemurs and stuff like that, and it was just way more challenging and way more interesting to me to learn different like body languages of each species. And so I got hooked on it when I started keeping.
So tell us a little bit more about the Alveos Education Center. It sounds very interesting. How large is it, and how did you create it? What happened?
Yeah, so it's come up really fast. I came up with the idea December of last year, and now I've bought 15 acres out in Central Texas, and we have how many animals do we have? 17 maybe ambassadors, not including insects. And we're just rescuing a bunch of different ambassadors from different places. From California, I've gotten some from a zoo in California, like Overstock at a zoo. I've gotten some crows from a wildlife rehab center that are non-releasable. We got donkeys rescued from an auction lot in Central Texas.
Wow.
Um, and so, yeah, they come from all over the place, and then they reside at the sanctuary. And then I curate educational programs around those ambassadors. So I use them on my stream to teach people, and that's been the come up. But it's happened really fast. I mean, we've built a lot in a very short amount of time, so I'm pretty proud of it.
Yeah, and you take care of all kinds of animals too. Like I saw one of your Twitch streams recently where you were like building a cage for millipedes, for example. So it's not just like big animals, like big cool animals. I mean, I think millipedes are super cool, but a lot of people wouldn't necessarily. So it's cool to see like all the variety of animals that you have.
It was
Um,
super important to me to pick up a bunch of invertebrates and to give a voice to some of the less charismatic fauna out there for conservation. So we're working on building a critter cave right now. So millipedes and tarantulas, jumping spider, walking
Wow.
sticks,
I have to
roaches.
ask, as a bat biologist, any bats?
We don't have any plans for bats, but that would be amazing.
And I'm going to ask about raptors, of course. That's my favorite topic. So,
Yeah. Right now we have the two crows, so we have a couple corvids, and then we have my falcon there that's on my license. So he's a peregrine prairie falcon hybrid, and that's the only raptor we have on site right now. I would really like to get a vulture in at some point. I have always had a soft spot for red-tailed hawks. I would love to have a red tail again at some point. But yeah, we've had conversations about eagles too. But
that's
that's
good.
a little bit down the line.
Do any of your animals, like, I guess, yeah, like, where do your animals tend to come from? I mean, you listed overstock at other places and stuff, but is there like any one source that really, like, you get most of them from, like, oh, these were animals that were pets and then people didn't want to keep them or something like that?
Yeah, they do kind of come from all over the place. So the donkeys were rescued from an auction lot. We have 4 parrots that were essentially surrendered to us. They were pets for a while, and she was looking for a new home for them. Our reptiles, we have a snake and a African bullfrog. Those came overstock from a zoo in California. And then we're getting a fox. The fox enclosure just finished at the facility. So we're getting a fox in February or March. He was a confiscation from the illegal pet trade in California. So that's going to be our first confiscation, I think. And then our crows from Wildlife Rehab Center, Central Texas, non-released. They're both imprinted birds. So they tried to release them and it didn't work out. So we have two crows. Yeah.
If they're imprinted crows, do they talk? I've seen crows at other places that know how to, like, talk and stuff. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, they definitely can't. Ours haven't yet. But I bet they will. We'll see.
Yeah, Maya, in the beginning, you said something very interesting about project management. That last time because I did that nearly all my life, all kinds of project management. I know how difficult it is from engineering point of view and so on. But I was just curious, especially now in the time of COVID, what was your experience like?
I mean, it depends on which project we're talking about.
Oh, that's
Some of
good.
them, yeah, some of them have been really smooth.
Oh,
I had a big fencing contract when I first bought the property. We fenced the whole thing, and that one went pretty smooth. We're working on a training center right now, big, like 30 by 50 foot structure where we're going to bring our ambassadors in to do training programs and fly birds in there and stuff. And that project has been a lot to manage. One of our contractors ended up dropping out of it, probably partially due to COVID and his business not doing so hot. But yeah, it depends on the contractor. It depends on the size of the project.
it
But they're all
does. It
different. It's a
does,
lot of
yes.
juggling. Yeah.
So I saw online that you also do falconry, right? And you mentioned you previously had a red tail, so that was like a red-tailed hawk. Like, do you go out and, like, find the animal and, like, train it and stuff, or yeah, like, I don't know. Do you still do falconry, I guess, is the first question.
Yeah, I do. So I'm a falconer here in Texas. I got my license when I moved here. I had to get a new one because I had my California one. My red tail I got when I was working at the zoo. Somebody brought in, he was under a year old, super emaciated, was found in a fence. So I got my license so that I could rehab that bird. And I successfully rehabbed him, released him. That was kind of the start of my streaming career as well, because I showed a lot of that process on my stream. And then currently I have my falcon, so my peregrine prairie hybrid. And I do fly him. He just got an eye enucleated, so he's still adjusting to having one eye and flying. But I do lure flying with him, and then we'll see if he's going to be able to hunt. I'm not sure that he's going to, but it's okay if he can't.
I
Well,
have no idea what lure flying is.
Oh,
Actually.
sure.
No.
Sorry. So a lure is usually it's just a piece of leather attached to a string, and you swing it in a field with a falcon flying around, and the falcon does passes and tries to catch the lure as they fly by. So it's just a way to exercise them and a way to engage them in kind of like a cat and mouse play or a falcon bird, you know, scenario play. So
Yeah, cool.
yeah,
yeah,
that's how people fly
we had
falcon.
an incredible story, Maya, a few years ago. We had a red-tailed hawk that grew up in an eagle's nest, which is very rare because usually they're brought in as prey and are consumed. But in this case, the parents adopted it, and it actually grew up and it became a wonderful story. So it's nice to see that you're a fan of red tail. So am I,
Oh, I
because
love red
that
tails.
story went to my heart. I'm just curious also to hear about your background. You got a bachelor's degree in agricultural education and communication in June 2020. Does that help you, or what motivated you to do that?
Yeah. So I before when I went into I had to declare a major my freshman and I was already super hooked on animals. So I thought I wanted to be in the livestock industry,
Hmm.
specifically working on sustainability in the livestock industry. So I went to school for that, started zookeeping, fell in love with exotics instead. I do think that the communications and education piece of my degree that helps quite a bit, but I'm certainly not in the ag industry. I teach about the ag industry a little bit. We have two chicken ambassadors, and
Really?
I recently did an episode on my stream where I talked about consumer choice and how your purchases of meat products and animal products can affect our environment. So I guess there's a little ag in there, but I thought I was going to do like ag journalism and sustainability and livestock, and I didn't quite go that way. But yeah,
Yeah, and we are monitoring the chats, by the way. So if you have questions for Maya, we'll like work them in there. And we do have a question about if you have any dietary restrictions, like are you vegetarian or pescatarian as a wildlife lover?
right. No, I'm neither vegetarian nor vegan or pescatarian. I do try really hard to consume only traceable meat. Growing up, all my friends were in FFA, 4-H, or Future Farmers of America. So they all raised animals. And the meat that I ate growing up was my parents would buy like a quarter of a steer, half a hog, and then like a few chickens every year. And that's what we would eat throughout the year. So I would know the animal itself. That's how I like to consume meat. It's much harder now that I'm not in California anymore. But yeah, I do consume those products, and I teach people about food labels as well, with our chicken ambassadors. So
That's incredible, Maya. Really, I admire your approach. I think that's fantastic. I wish more people were like that. So I'm really curious also about you have incredible success on social media, which is really important nowadays. And you've obviously captured the Twitch world, and you've got a lot of fans here, which is very unusual from Twitch coming over to look at the
oh,
ancient YouTube, and
I hope
these
they're
channels.
being nice.
They are being nice. I'm monitoring
Okay,
them, so they get, it's all good.
okay.
But I'm just curious. That's fantastic. Can you tell us a bit what motivated you to go to Twitch and how you actually became so successful there?
Yeah. Kind of a funny story. I mean, I started streaming in 2019, and I was doing music streams only. So, just like playing the guitar, singing, sitting in bed, whatever, for fun. Like I never intended for it to be my career, or to do any conservation education on my stream whatsoever. But I eventually was streaming and then was talking about falconry, and then people wanted to see my red tail, so I brought my red tail out on stream. And then somebody took a clip of that and put it on Reddit. And that's kind
Right.
of how the whole thing started. Is they were like, "This girl has a hawk in her kitchen," and yeah, it just kind of blew up from there. I met a bunch of people because of that clip. Ended up moving to Texas, also because of that clip, and
Is
yeah,
that right? Okay.
that's right. Yeah.
And it's quite a jump from California to Texas. So what motivated what is so special about Texas that made you say that's where I want to be?
Texas is a hub for content creators. I always tell people what LA is to actors and
Hmm.
YouTubers, kind of, is what Austin is to streamers, live streamers. So there are lots and lots of people here. And yeah, I met some cool people, made a lot of friends in Texas, and they were creators. And so I decided to move here. What was it? A year and a half ago, I think. Maybe. I
I
don't
have
know.
kind sorry. I have kind of a morbid question while we're talking about like dead animals and what happens to them. Do you have any plans for like the animals at your facility? Like when they die, are you going to try to like get them taxidermied or anything to like be able to preserve them as like educational? I don't want to say tools, but like then you can still show them off and stuff to some degree. Or have you not thought about that yet?
I have not thought that far ahead. I think it depends on the ambassador. I would consider it. Sure. I'm not sure how my audience would feel about something like that though, because they all get really attached to them, to the specific ambassadors. So I think they would probably think that it was weird.
A bit
But
morbid.
but
Like it's
maybe.
like when you like stuff your cat or something
Right.
like that after it
Yeah.
dies.
Yeah. I don't know. Cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, we got a question here from Stealthy Doja. I hope I'm pronouncing his names correct. Which
Fine.
ambassador is Maya's favorite? So there you go.
Oh, I hate that question.
You hate that question. Yeah,
I
okay.
do. I don't know.
You
It's a
don't
hard
know.
one.
That's okay.
I not actually. I don't
Mm.
actually. I'm joking. I think that I'm the closest to our emu. I've had her since she was like 14 days old. Um, she was at my house for a really long time while she was getting old enough to live outside. So I've spent a lot of time with her. Um, who else? Um, I'm pretty partial to one of our crows as well, just because I've been working with him for a long time. He's the first corvid that I've trained as well. His name's Abbott. So I've spent a lot of time with that bird. And then my bird, obviously. He just became an ambassador, but prior to that, he was just my personal falconry bird. So,
So when you say you
yeah.
train this corvid, what exactly do you mean by that? What do you do?
When he came into the rehab center, I was working at a wildlife rehab
Hmm.
center when he first came in. So me and my animal care coordinator who lives on site at the facility, we trained him to do fist to fist flights, perch to fist flights. We got him flying like 40, 50 feet.
Hmm.
We crate trained him to go inside a crate and back out so that we could bring him to programs. Um, we trained him to pick raffle winners for a fundraiser. So he would pick out names from a hat for a fundraiser that we did at the rehab center, and taught him how to fetch. Just things like that, but for his enrichment and for his stimulation, because they're such smart birds and they just love learning, and love being like a part of a program. So yeah, we taught him lots of different fun behaviors, and now he's at my facility, so I'm pretty pleased about that.
That's so cool. I remember I saw this crow in captivity that was talking, and he kept going oi oi oi, and the one of the women that worked there, she was like, oh yeah, he just learned how to make the oi sound finally, because he knew how to say like a bunch of things actually, but he would just kind of sit there and he'd be like boy oi 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 boy, and I was like, God, you have to shut up. And it's like he was going through like a little kid going through a phase where they learn
Yeah,
something new and
they
they're really
babble.
excited about it.
Hmm.
Yeah. Let's see. I have to ask. So your birds that you use for falconry. I know. So like a lot of people that do falconry, they go out and they capture like otherwise healthy wild birds. Sometimes from the and like take them from the nest. But it sounds, from what I could gather, that that's not what you've done. That right? These are birds that were couldn't live in the wild for some reason.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, so I've never trapped. It is pretty traditional to trap a bird. Um, my current bird was born in captivity. He's a peregrine prairie falcon hybrid, so not naturally occurring. He's got a leg band. He was born in captivity for falconry, purchased by my sponsor in Texas, who's a master falconer here. Um, the way that I got him is actually kind of wild. I was working at the rehab center. We got a call one day that there was a bird that landed in a prison with a camera on his back. And I was like, are you sure? He said, is that really what happened? And he did have a transmitter on his back, and they thought that it was a camera, and they thought that someone like sent the bird in to the prison.
Oh,
But
no.
anyway, I picked up the bird, reunited him with his owner, my sponsor, and my sponsor offered him to me there. So he's non-releasable for a few reasons. One, born in captivity. Two, not a naturally occurring bird because he's a hybrid. And three, now because he's only got the one eye. So
Maya, let's quickly take a look at your website.
sure.
Because I can see a lot of questions asked about the ambassadors. I like your your reasoning why you think everyone is important. Would you like to, as I scroll through, just to talk a little bit about them?
Yeah. Well, can I interject a question real quick?
Of course,
'Cause while
go,
it's
go,
front and
go.
center, one of
Yeah.
the questions on YouTube is what's the significance of the chicken as like an exotic animal place?
Yeah. The chickens, I never meant to have chickens at the sanctuary because they're not very exotic, or they're not exotic at all. But it turned out to be one of the coolest ambassadors we have. I feel like I can talk all day about, how the rainforest is being decimated and there's habitat loss and palm oil and we're losing these monkeys, right? Which is great, and people need to know about that. Not that that's great, you know what I mean?
No, no, I know what you mean.
People need to know. People need to know about those things. But to have something like a chicken and to say, when you go to the grocery store today, you can look at this label, you can look at this label, you can reduce your meat consumption, you can do this for the environment, and it gives them a tangible thing that they can do. To be a conservationist themselves, that goes beyond just awareness and hearing about the world and being kind of left feeling helpless. So that's why we have the chickens, is to talk about the ag industry, because it's so significant environmentally.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, give a quick shout out to Dumi Dafimo. That's no, thanks for the donation. That's NOK, so that's Norwegian, if I see it correctly. So thanks a lot. So let's jump to your website, Maya, and you got these beautiful ambassadors. Do you just want to talk a bit about them? I can click on something if you want me to. So
Yeah, sure. I'll talk about any of them. Whatever.
so what would you like? Where do you want me to go? You just tell me.
We start with Stompy.
Okay, we'll start.
Stompy's, yeah. So this is our emu. She was hatched on Valentine's Day. She's almost a year old. It's a funny picture.
Wow.
She was incubated at the zoo in California, the zoo that I used to keep at in college. And they shipped her to me on American Airlines.
Really?
When she was 14 days old. And she's an imprint too. She was just raised by people, and I've used her to talk about the exotic meat trade a little bit. And she hangs out in the pasture. She lives with our 2 donkeys and my horse out there, and she's she's the sweetest, cuddliest bird ever, which is bizarre because I'm not used to birds being cuddly, but
Is
she
that
really
right?
likes. Yeah, she loves contact. She loves pressure and hugs and head scratches, and it's pretty cool. I love her.
That has to
Is
do
that
with you
because-
too. Yeah. Sorry, Georgia.
Oh,
go
is that
ahead.
because she's imprinted a little bit, or?
It definitely, yeah,
Okay.
contributes.
Georgie, next one. Bullfrog.
Yeah, Georgie's our African bullfrog. He also came from the zoo in California. He was a surrender from the pet trade. We're the second largest frog in the world, but he's a baby right now. They'll get to be the size of a dinner plate, but right now it's a good size comparison. It's kind of like hamburger size, maybe a little bit bigger. But he's super cool. He can eat 30 crickets in a day. He's grown rapidly since we brought him back to the facility in April. And his major purpose as an amphibian is to teach people about chytrid fungus. It's a pathogen that's killing hundreds and hundreds and thousands of amphibians worldwide. So I talk about the frog leg trade. I talk about frogs in medicine, and I talk about chytrid and how it's affecting not just frogs but all amphibians.
So when you let's get into this fungus for just 1 second. That's interesting that you say that. So what is that fungus? What can you say about it? You said it's worldwide. What do we know about it?
Yeah, unfortunately, not enough. But it is a pathogen that affects young frogs, and it's everywhere. I think we've lost 9 species to chytrid, and they're still doing a lot of studying on it. But they think that the origins were either frog leg trade and frogs escaping from frog
Okay.
farms, bullfrog
Okay.
farms, or frogs in the 60s as pregnancy tests in the U.S. So they would import African clawed frogs to the U.S. inject them with female urine, and if the frog ovulated, then it meant that the woman was pregnant. They were actually super, super, what's the word I'm looking for? Accurate.
Right.
But it did mean a lot of trade of amphibians. So yeah, it's been pretty rampant. It's pretty devastating.
I'm supposed to ask you here. Speens is asking how high can Georgie jump? That's good.
That is a good question. I not very high. I think he can jump farther than he can jump high.
Tico, is that right? Tico,
Yeah.
shall we? Is that the next one?
Yes, tico.
Well, we have a question. I don't fully understand it, but a question if I could ask you about the Stompy Acero dynamic. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Acero.
Yeah, that's my horse.
Oh.
They hang out. The donkeys are friends. They hang out together in the pasture, and then the horse and the emu hang out. So
Cool.
yeah, they're friends. It's
They're
pretty
friends,
neat.
or they tolerate each other? You
I think they're friends. She'll like hang out underneath him, like under his belly, and she'll pick stuff off of him. And maybe she likes him more than he does, because I guess he kind of just lets her be. But yeah, they're pretty cool. Tico's a blue and gold macaw. We got him also in April from a facility in California called Pandemonium Aviary. She breeds birds from New Guinea, endangered birds from New Guinea, but these were her personal pet birds. He was originally surrendered in a box at an SPCA in California by somebody who I assume just got a parrot because they saw the cool parrot videos. They were like, parrots talk, parrots sing, parrots are so cool and colorful. And then you get the parrot and it destroys your house and it screams and it bites really hard. So somebody left him in a box at an SPCA, and she adopted him from that SPCA. She had him for a number of years and then wanted him to come to us. So he's been with us since April.
Maya, you seem very connected to the world. I'm really impressed. Do you travel a lot, actually?
Not a lot. I've done some traveling out of the country. I've gone to Belize for conservation stuff, for filming. I have plans this year to go to Rwanda, the new Dian Fossey facility. Should be pretty cool. I've gone to Ghana, and I travel a lot within the U.S. For stream purposes
Right.
too.
Okay, Oliver. What can you say about Oliver?
Oliver is our rooster. So one of these chicken ambassadors that teaches people about the ag industry. I actually got him from a feed store in Texas when I was just out buying hay, because they have a reject rooster cage outside of the feed store, because people will buy chicks and raise them up, and they only want pullets, right? They get chicks so that they have eggs, and people don't want roosters because they're loud and they bully other chickens and stuff like that. So one turns out to be a rooster. They return it to the feed store, and he was just in this like tiny like 2x2 wire cage, and it was $5. So I gave him a 5 and took him home, and he's been fantastic. They're both target trained. They're super, super fun to train, and a lot of people have fallen in love with him for good reason. He has a lot of personality for chicken.
Yeah, so Maya, is Alveus kind of located on the outskirts of Austin or something? Because we have a question from Gentleman Ghost that when he thinks of like wildlife rehab centers, or wildlife centers, he doesn't think of like cities oftentimes. So is it hard being so close to a city, or?
Yeah, we're certainly not in the city. We're on 15 acres, so it's not like we have skyscrapers all around the facility. But yeah, Austin's a pretty big place.
Noodle. Can you talk about Noodle?
Yes, Noodle came from the zoo as well. She is a carpet python. She's about 8 feet now, even though she doesn't really look it in the picture. She was at the zoo that I worked at, and when I was keeping, everybody was afraid of her because they would feed her in her enclosure. And so every time you walked by the enclosure, she would strike at the glass. So nobody took her out for programs because she just striked a lot. And so that's kind of why they offered her to me. They were like, we don't use the snake for programs. Do you want her? So I said yes, took her. And we've had no issues. We feed her outside of her enclosure. She's got a much bigger enclosure now that she seems to be pretty happy in. And both of our snakes, we have 2, Noodle and Patchy, are both mostly used to talk about the pet trade.
Okay, and Maya, you can flag this question. I'm going to say it very carefully because I have no clue what this is about. Okay, but do me do me the Fino's asking. Can you ask Maya about the hot tub meta stompy thing? She asked about it before, or she talked about it before, but I did not understand. Well, neither do I, so I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, so Stompy loves water. She has a kiddie pool. She's graduated through 3 different kiddie pools as she's grown up. She's got a whole nother year of growing to do. But I've done lots of streams where I show her taking a bath.
I see. Good.
And so there's a joke that there's a category on Twitch that's like pools and hot tubs, where people stream themselves like at beaches and stuff like that. So I've been in that category showing Stompy in her pool.
Right. I see. Good.
So
Okay.
is that like typical for the species though, or is that like sort of an individual quirk?
Yeah, they love water. Emus love
Okay.
water.
Yeah.
By the way, thanks for all the donations. Very kind. So it's interesting. They're all coming in. I know there's a joke going on. This is all, of course, all from Norway. I get it. Okay, but I do speak Swedish, by the way, so I understand Norwegian. So that's why I'm completely out of this. But it's interesting. For some reason, they're all coming in I think it's Norwegian currency, or I'm not getting it anyway. I'm just laughing about it. Thanks. Okay. Okay. I'm just going to go back a second. Let's go to the donkey. 1 second.
We do have a lot of questions about bed bugs.
You go.
too.
Do you want to go ahead?
There's not even. Not even. There's been so many. Do you have a comment?
About bugs?
Yeah, I don't know.
No, I don't really know. I've talked about bed bugs on my stream before a little bit, but not a lot. I don't have any at the sanctuary. Maybe someday.
Yeah, maybe someday if you're not lucky. I mean, there is a thing in the United States where like used to use a ton of pesticides in the 50s, like just unregulated use of pesticides, and so there was like not the insect populations took like a huge dive, and now that pesticide use is more regulated, we're starting to see, unfortunately, the recovery of things like bed bugs becoming more common and stuff again. So
interesting.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, Christian. Back to
Yeah, Steuben's actually asking a great question. It's hard to get an imprinted snake as a pet, like take care of it and stuff. So maybe you can comment a bit on that. That's a good question, actually.
An imprinted snake. Does you just mean like to get one that was born in captivity?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, or no,
Yeah.
or one that comes in from the wild. Is there any difference, or do snakes always behave in a certain way?
Yeah, and a shocking number of reptiles in the pet trade are wild caught. A lot of them come from the wild. Our ball python is a great ambassador. There are so many ball pythons that are imported from Africa every year for the pet trade. So you have to be really careful to make sure that it's a captive bred animal if you're sourcing a pet. But in terms of their behavior, honestly, I don't think that it's that much different, especially if you're getting a baby snake. They're all just really docile. Naturally, they just kind of hang out, chill. I certainly wouldn't be able to tell between a captive bred and a wild caught snake.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Georgia, you want to go ahead?
Oh, are we? I thought we were going to look at more. Let's look at more animals on the website. Yeah.
Okay, I'll jump over. Is that how do you pronounce it? Jalapeno? I don't know how to pronounce it.
Jalapeno.
Okay, very nice. What a these names are wonderful. It's really nice. So tell us about it.
Yeah, so jalapeno and serrano, they're both named after peppers. They were rescued from, or they were adopted from a donkey rescue in Central Texas. Both bought off of feedlots. So there are big feedlots in the States where they do auctions. And a lot of those animals are just surrendered or, livestock that overstock people don't want anymore. A lot of those animals go into the pet food industry. And then a lot of them are exported for traditional medicine as well.
Really?
Donkey hide is boiled, and it creates a gelatin that is used in Chinese traditional medicine for loads of things. cancer cures, anti-aging products, stuff like that. And so the donkeys we have to talk about animal use in medicine. The wild donkey population in Botswana has decreased by like 39% in the past. I think it's less than 10 years because of that trade. So it's a pretty serious thing that not a lot of people know about. And not a lot of people think about when they look at domestic donkeys because they're everywhere. But
Yes.
it's another one of those domestic, kind of like the chickens, that is pretty interesting to learn about. Surprisingly interesting to learn about.
Yeah. Maya, I have a question actually. So a lot of times when I'm traveling, like in somewhere like South or Central America, they will have like donkeys or horses that you can rent for riding or helping to carry your equipment and gear. But like a lot of times the animals don't look very healthy. And but I'm not like, I haven't grown up around donkeys and horses and stuff like that. So I never want to like the animal if they're not taking care of their animals. So like, are there like key indicators I could use to be like, oh yes, this is like a well-fed donkey, like its hip bones aren't sticking out or something?
Yeah, that one's tough. I don't have like a good blanket for it. It's certainly not a well-regulated industry, so it's not like you can look for a seal, or a label or something where they meet a number of standards. They're all private, so it varies greatly. I think how well their animals are taken care of. I think what you said about the hip bones and stuff like that, it's just kind of like a general, do these animals look healthy to you, type thing. But yeah, it's a hard thing to know.
Yeah, Maya, I just have a question, because you talk a lot about protection and also the misuse of animals. How strict is the legislation actually in the States, or does it vary from state to state in the States, or is it more on a national level?
It very much varies
Really?
from state to state. Yeah, so going from California to Texas, the permit process for having animals is so different. California is much more strict about what you can and can't have. I have 2 ferrets in Texas that would be illegal for me to have in California.
Right.
Getting a permit for the fox is much easier in Texas than it is in California. And lots of people have exotic pets in Texas as well. I think there's some crazy statistic about there's more tigers in captivity in the state of Texas than exist in the wild. Lots of people have big cats, big exotics, private zoos, stuff like that. So some states it's easier than others in regards to the pet trade anyway.
We have a couple questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you have any aquatic animals currently at the sanctuary, or plans for aquatic animals? You showed us a frog that looked not super aquatic, but
yeah, no, the frog is the only thing that we have that really needs water, or the only amphibian that we have. I don't have plans currently for anything else. We had dabbled a little bit in a capybara, which would need water, but not an aquatic animal. And then things like fish and dolphins or any marine mammals is not something that we're ever gonna be able to do.
wait, so you have a capybara?
No. We
Okay.
were working on getting one a few months ago, and it fell through. But
Okay.
we may end up doing that at some point.
Such cool animals.
I'm going to ask you something about this peregrine falcon. So Orion. I love the name
Yes.
Orion because I'm also an astronomer, so that appeals to me.
Oh,
Go,
cool.
go ahead.
Yeah. You have a specific question, or you want me to just talk about it?
No, just talk about him. That's fine.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So he's the first falcon that I've ever had. I was very much a hawk girl before I got him. So he's taught me a lot. They're way more sensitive than training a red tail. So I've learned a lot from this bird. He had an abscess in his eye a while ago, and then it just never healed right. It was always irritating him. I had to do eye drops, which reduced his quality of life quite a bit because he hated them, and it affected our relationship. So I ended up just getting the eye removed because my options were get the eye removed or
Right.
do eye drops every day for the rest of his life. So
And
ended up getting it removed.
yeah, and how is his behavior affected by the loss of one eye? Do they compensate well?
Yeah. So luckily may not be the right word, but luckily, as because he had that abscess that didn't heal very well, he was losing vision in his eye slowly. And I was flying him up until he completely lost vision in that eye. So he had kind of a gradual transition out of it.
Right.
And then once he got his eye removed, I don't think his behavior has changed all that much. He's a little bit less confident in hitting the lure. And, he makes some more mistakes that I'm not used to seeing him make, but he's very much capable of flight and, and flying for programs and stuff like that. So
Incredible. Georgia, do you want to go to say something?
Yeah, I'm going to wrap a couple related comments into
Mm-hmm.
one here. So we have one question. Maya, did you do anything special to get Alveus to stick around? And another question, what's the biggest advantage of having a nonprofit being streamed so often versus a more conventional nonprofit? I mean, so I'm guessing that to some extent that streaming helps you bring in money or support for the nonprofit. Is that true?
absolutely. Yeah, I could not run the nonprofit without live streaming. So in terms of special things to get it off the ground, I did a big capital campaign fundraiser when was it? February 10th, I think. So almost a year ago. We raised over our capital fundraising goal. I shaved my head
I saw
because we
that.
hit that goal, right. So we raised $573,000, shaved my head, and that's how I purchased the land myself, but that's how we started building enclosures and got development off the ground. That's also why I have 2 full-time staff, 1 part-time staff. We do 2 big fundraisers a year. So we also just did a Halloween event fundraiser where I had a bunch of other creators come to the facility. It was basically a party. That was also a fundraiser for $100,000. And then I have one other fundraiser coming up in April, and we are teaching all of the animals to paint and doing an art auction that's live streamed as well. So people can buy paintings from the ambassadors that way. But yeah, all the fundraising that is done for Alveus, almost all of it is through my stream.
Do you ever auction off the chance to name the animals? We had a couple comments earlier that were suggesting the name Leonard for an animal and other naming suggestions.
Yeah, I've never auctioned off that
Good idea.
that opportunity. It's a good idea. My community has named several ambassadors, but it was kind of like a collective thing. Maybe it was a poll, like a voting poll. I don't remember, but yeah, they've named a few of them.
I have a more general question for you that really intrigues me because you're so young and I think you accomplished so much, which is absolutely incredible. I'm so happy to see young people, do this. And so I want to ask you really, what worries you most about the future as far as animals are concerned?
Yeah, good question, big question.
I know, I'm sorry, but
No, it's okay.
it's
There's certainly a lot of stress. I mean, it's a fantastic opportunity that I have, and there's also a lot of stress in that I don't want to mess it up. I have a really unique demographic on Twitch, being younger men mostly, who are really hard to tap into when it comes to conservation. Conservation, at least in my experience, education has been mostly with school kids, like younger kids, or adults that are already looking for more information. So tapping into that younger audience is really special.
yes.
And so I guess my fear is not doing enough, and not giving them enough tangible things to actually make an impact, and just teaching them and then having it stop there. So I spent a lot of time thinking about how to actually be effective in pushing conservation and teaching conservation. On a larger scale, my fears for the future are, how many more species we're going to lose, and how fast, and how that's going to affect the rest of them. Because every time we lose something, it affects the next. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I mean, on that topic, I mean, we're coming towards the end of the live stream probably. Christian and I
Yep.
next week are planning on doing, the topic is going to be animal extinctions. It's a little bit sad, but we're at the point where there's a lot of videos and stuff of animals that are now extinct. So we're going to try to watch some of those and also look at photos and stuff like that. And then the week after that, as a mood booster, we're going to interview Dr. Ricardo Marino Perez, who's an entomologist who studies insects, and he's described several new species of grasshopper. And so we're going to talk to him about like what it's like to go out. And I mean, some of these grasshoppers are beautiful, like they have different colors on them and stuff. And I was talking to him recently, and like some of them, like it's like the type of thing where you see it and he's like, I knew when I saw it, it was a new species, you know. Super
That's so cool.
So yeah, we try. It's always a struggle to try to balance like the need for conservation efforts with being hopeful and not getting like too down about this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But to kind of close out on Maya's takeaways, maybe like, yeah, what would you like to tell people about what they can do? You've mentioned a few
That's
things
it.
like,
Yeah.
you know, being careful about where you get pets from and stuff like that. Like, what are our take home like actionable conservation things?
Yeah. It's like my favorite quote, and I always forget the quote. But it's something about you can't care unless you know about something, you know, and I think just putting yourself out there and learning about things is really, really important. And then passing those things on to other people is really important. One of the big ones for me right now, and it may just be because my mind is in invertebrate conservation and collecting for our critter cave, but just addressing your own misconceptions about species is really important for conservation. Understanding that snakes are not all bad, that you know that bugs are not all bad, is huge. So taking steps to educate yourself and then to talk to other people about it and hopefully change more minds about it is the easiest place for everybody to start. I mean, you can go on about you know, reducing your single-use plastic use and reducing your water use and stuff like that, and that's all very important. And I think that people should do things like that. But on such a large scale, it's I don't know, it's hard to tell people like that and tell people things like that and expect a big change. I think it has to start deeper. It has to start with the education and awareness.
Well said. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm curious about one last thing because you know, I noticed that you're incredibly focused and also driven to the future. If you could be remembered for one thing, what would that be?
Oh my gosh.
That's a
Kristen,
heavy
this
one.
is like one of those like existential questions you ask people, and then they have nightmares
You
about
don't
it
have
later.
you don't have to answer it. I know, but I'm just curious, right?
No, that's a great question. I think. Okay, so one of the first things that I said when I started growing on my channel was that my life purpose or my life goal was to witness and be a part of the comeback of at least 5 species that I care about. I don't really know what that would look like. I don't know if that means that Alveus needs to get involved in breeding and release programs. If that means I'm traveling somewhere to actually dive deep into a species, and I don't know if it's petitions. I don't know if it's you know, donations or what. But I would like to actually have an impact on at least one species, and help to bring them back and for it to actually be tangible. But that's a big dream, and I have no idea what that looks like yet.
That's a good answer. Excellent answer, really. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Well-
I think it's wonderful to have like a specific goal because yeah, like helping with the recovery of 5 species, it's like it's much more concrete of a goal than I normally hear for people that are interested in like actively like positively affecting conservation in some way. So I think that's probably how you get so much done, by maybe like you're naturally good at forming sort of
I am
specific
going.
goals.
I'm going to throw one last question and do me, Dafim, and also thank you very much for the kind donation. I think that's a great question because Georgia and I took this up before. Last question for Maya. Should house cats be allowed outside?
Oh, big question.
Yeah.
House cats, outdoor cats are. It's an epidemic. I mean, it's horrible. Outdoor cats kill so much wildlife. People think that they're just mousers, that they're just taking care of mice in their barn. They kill so many birds a year. I wish I had the numbers memorized, but I
Yeah,
don't.
we have the numbers. It's in the billion and more. Only in the States alone. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it is pretty outrageous. So there's a start in captured, neuter, release programs, but they're still being
They're not very
released.
effective.
Yeah.
These studies are
Um,
showing, yeah.
yeah, it's like a invasive species, but everywhere. Times like a million. So no, don't let your cats outside if you can help it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Maya. It's been absolutely wonderful, and really your sanctuary is marvelous. As soon as COVID is over, maybe I can meet you in person one day, and I'd love to come to the sanctuary. You know, it would be
Yeah,
an honor really
absolutely.
to go there. And I wish you really all the best for the future. You're doing a great job. You're a wonderful example. Thank you so much for being on our show.
Thank you for having me. I